Okay.
Oh, mazel tov.
Yeah, I got engaged to be here. I don't have it.
Oh, you're there now?
Okay, we're up to Ach. Page Kuf Yud Aleph, the third paragraph. You can hear me back there? I guess you can't hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
Ach yesh eze toisves chasidus. There are certain additional parts of chasidus. There are parts of this hanhaga, of this midah, that involves serving Hashem, not because it's the letter of the law, not because it's what it says in Shulchan Aruch, but it's because a person has a sense that this is something that will give Hashem nachas. Yesh eze toisves chasidus she'em yaseh oisam ha'adam lufnei hamoin ha'am, that if a person would do these actions in front of the people, if random people will see him acting in this unusual way, yischaku olav yisloitzu, they will laugh at him, it'll be funny. And there are certain hanhagas that different tzaddikim have, that if you would just see them doing it, you would just you see them serving Hashem or davening in this way or doing different minhagim, you may think it's very, very strange. And that does not necessarily add to Kiddush Hashem, to Kavod Shamayim, when a person, even if a person has the best intentions, but when a person is acting in a way that makes him seem like he's a strange person. So v'nimtzu uchaytim v'ne'anashim al yadai. So then it turns out, this person, let's say, is davening in a way that draws a lot of attention to himself. Have you seen that ever? You've seen that? The clapping? Why do people do that? You seen that?
Yeah.
What's the thing?
Wake them up, baby.
What?
Wake them up.
You wish. What is that?
Channeling their kavanah.
I know. What about everyone else? What about everyone else's kavanah? I think everyone feels a little bit of leitzanus to that. And people wonder what's going on in this guy's head. Is he really having so much kavanah he doesn't realize what's going on around him? Is that really what's happening? Do you think so? Or is the guy thinking, wow, I'm clapping? I don't know. I've never done it. I don't know. But certainly, it causes people to to laugh, no? It causes people to think cynically. It causes people to look at that person like, who do you think you are? It definitely brings up negative interactions. Thank you. So, should a person do it? Let's say maybe there is something to it. Apparently, if tzaddikim do it, then there's something to it. The big tzaddikim used to do something like that, or to move in very dramatic ways while you're davening. I one time was in Eretz Yisrael. When I was a bacher, I was in Bnei Brak for Shabbos, and there was a young Rebbe there that I was very taken by. I happened to eat I ate the Shabbos meal Friday night in his father-in-law's house, and there was this young Rebbe, maybe in his low 30s, and I was very intrigued from him. His slavos, the way he seemed to be very smart. And the next day I went to his shtibel to check him out a little bit. And I walked in and he wasn't there. And then I peeked into the Ezras Nashim, and there he was all alone, not in public, like the Mesilas Yesharim was talking about. And he was saying Tehillim, and it was like a sight to behold, this guy saying Tehillim. He was moving his hands and shuckling and everything. I didn't feel like this because he actually went to some place private. I was the one who was kind of spying on him. The person who's doing this, he could have not done that. He didn't have to do it. It wasn't a chiyuv to do it. It wasn't an obligation. It's not an absolute obligation. Something like this. Vadai sheyoser hagun hu lechosid sheyanicheyu misheyaaseyu. It's better off for a chassid to leave it alone than to do it. Things that draw negative attention, even if you're doing it l'shem shamayim, things that make a person think that you're weird, that you don't do unless you're obligated to do it. So, this type of stuff comes up. You're traveling, you're in an airport, you have to daven. You daven. Because that's a chayva muchletes, it's an absolute obligation. It's getting time to daven. If you could work it out to daven in a shul before or after, so then you do that. But if not, it's an absolute obligation. When it comes to absolute obligations, then the other side applies, where we're stubborn and we're proud and we do what we have to do, and we're proud to be Jewish and we're proud to serve Hashem and we don't back down from it. But when it comes to additional minhagim that would draw people's attention or make people think negatively, that's not something that we necessarily have to do. So, this is what the Navi said, that you should act with tznius, with Hashem. People think tznius is always just about like a woman dressing modestly. People think that's the whole story of tznius. But tznius is a way of acting, it's a way of life. That I'm not broadcasting myself all over. I don't make everything about me. I don't draw undue attention to myself. I go in a quiet way. I don't have to be noticed. I do my thing. I sit in my corner. That's hatznei aleches. Walk with tznius, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with a certain modesty in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You find this a lot, but if you know real Talmidei Chachamim, they don't broadcast their hanhagos. They don't broadcast their minhagim. They don't broadcast the extra things that they do. Like, for example, I remember one time one of my friends went over to my Rosh Hashiva. He wanted to know if the Rosh Hashiva fasts on his parents' yartzites. There's such a thing in Shulchan Aruch. There's a personal fast day that some people fast on their parents' yartzeit. So my friend went over to my Rosh Hashiva on the day of his father's yartzeit, or his mother, I don't remember, and said, "Can I ask the Rosh Hashiva a question?" He said, "Certainly, of course, you could ask." So he said, "Does the Rosh Hashiva fast today?" So he said, "Okay, you asked." But he wouldn't talk about himself. He said, "Okay, you wanted to ask, you asked." But he was basically saying, stay out of my personal life. My own avodas Hashem is not your business. If you have a question that has to do with you or a Torah or something, we can talk about it. But what I do in secret, that's not your business. Imagine a Rebbe came in here and sat down to teach Musar and said, I mamish had an incredible thought while I was sitting on the floor saying Tikkun Chatzos last night. There's a little bit of a lack of tznius. I don't say Tikkun Chatzos, by the way, full disclosure. But there's a certain lack of tznius to that. Like, if you're going to have these hanhagos, keep them to yourself. It's too often, you don't have to put on your status every time you do something extra. That you keep it to yourself. It's a quiet thing. It's a tznius. It's something quiet. It's important. A person is saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. So if a person's davening in shul, let's say, so they sing songs by Hallel, so he sings along, and of course he should. And Hallel is an unbelievable tefillah, and he should say it with all of his kayach. But that guy who's davening in the airport, I would strongly suggest that he not sing all the songs out loud while he's davening in the airport. That's an act of chasidus. It's an extra thing. Does it say in Shulchan Aruch that in order to be Yotze Hallel you have to sing the songs and jump and dance? Does it say that? It doesn't say it. If it's going to draw negative attention to yourself, if people are going to think you're strange, then you don't do it. It depends. It depends. Sometimes it's like it's a group of people that this is their tefillah, and either way, people are walking by think they're strange, and it's not a question of them, if they're laughing at the whole tzibur, so then it's different. But even then, if a minion of people are davening in the airport, I think it does have to be with a little more tznius. A guy that likes to scream Shema Yisrael, okay, tone it down a little bit. The lady who's making announcements that the flight is being boarded doesn't have to get confused, like shh, trying to make it an out. You don't have to do that. Keep it toned down. Do things in a calm way. You find it, when someone's too much advertising what they do, you start being a little suspicious of that whole action to begin with. What's this big advertisement? Some people have minhagim that are unbelievable, precious, special minhagim, and those are the people that never, ever, ever talk about it. They don't ever mention. They don't talk about it. Tell you something interesting. My Rabbi Kielsid, who speaks here every other Monday night, so he's my mechutin. His daughter is married to my son, and I noticed something over the years, which he never says. He never talks about it, but I noticed over the years that he has this unbelievable minig. Anytime a guy goes out with his daughter, if the shidduch works, so that's great. If the shidduch doesn't work, he stays in touch with that guy and helps him find the shidduch. Do you ever hear of anything like that in your life? I didn't know this, but I one time was at a wedding, and it was a guy that I knew from through Waterbury channels. It wasn't it had nothing to do with him, and he was there dancing by the wedding. I was like, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm the shadchan." That's all he said. Oh, very nice. And then I found out he's the shadchan because the guy went out with his daughter. His recordings of his speeches are all over the place. He speaks all over. Do you think he comes to his... Now I'm spoiling it for him, but do you think he comes to his speech and he's like, I just want to tell you how amazing I am. He doesn't do that. The Mesilas Yesharim is talking specifically also when things look strange. There are hanhagos of Chasidus that sometimes look strange to people. And those things specifically to hide. But the idea of tznius, that's an idea bichlal, not to be overly public about the extra things that we do. We don't have to do that. The Kama Chasidim Gedolim, there were many great Chasidim, Heinichu miminhage Chasidusam. They left alone. They didn't pursue their own minhagim of Chasidus. They were with a lot of people. Another example is the guy that comes to shul with like 6 esrogim. Because he has different shitas. This is the Chazanish. This is this. It's very beautiful. There are people who do that. I'm not knocking it. You can do that, but keep your esrogim at home. I'm not talking about also like a big Rosh Hashiva that you expect that he would be doing something like that. But could you imagine that you showed up in shul and you set up your 6 esrogim? You think people might be watching you? If it's too much attention and it's not the Ikar Adin, don't do it. Either do it in private or don't do it at all. A person, have any of you torn Kriya by the Kaisel? You've done that ever? Okay. Even that feels a little funny, right? What?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I've gotten used to it over the years. If Orthodox Jews do that, it's not like I'm standing in Mea Sharim tearing my clothing and people are like, what on earth are you doing? People know what I'm doing. But even then, I feel it a little. You know what I mean, right? You feel it a little bit like it's going, tearing. But imagine that a person, and I could imagine this. You haven't been in Eretz Yisrael in a while. You love Eretz Yisrael. You wish that Mashiach would come. You show up to the Kaisel. After everything that we've been through at the hands of the Arabs, you see a gold dome of a mosque in the place that our Beis HaMikdash should be, and it tears at you. And you want to tear Kriya and start sobbing in a loud voice. And maybe tzaddikim would do that. But I think that would draw undue attention, no? So that's the kind of thing. Hatsnei aleches. Cry. Cry silently. Cry to yourself. Don't make a scene that will cause other people to make leitzanos. It's a rule in Yiddishkeit. We don't do that. We don't do things that make other people make leitzanos. And he says an interesting thing. He says here, the Kama Chasidim Gedolim Heinichu miminhage Chasidus beYosem ein Hamoin Ha'am. He adds another reason, not just because it's going to make other people make fun, but also mishum de michzi ki yuhara. Does anyone know what that means? Michzi ki yuhara? Michzi Kiyura. It looks like Gaiva. It looks like a Bal Gaiva. Who on earth do you think you are? You know that famous story they say that's not true, but it's a very, but it's a true story. It's true, even though it's not true. They talk about this Rav that goes up to the Aron Kodesh, and he opens the Aron Kodesh, and he falls to the ground, and he starts crying and sobbing. Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm a nothing. I'm a nobody. I've no avodas Hashem. I've no mitzvahs. I've no midas. Rabbeinu Shalom. So some other guy, some gabbai in the shul or something, sees the Rebbe doing that, the Rav doing that, so he goes next to him, and he also falls to the ground in front of the Aron Kodesh, and says, Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm nothing, I'm nobody. So somebody says to him, who do you think you are to cry that you're nobody? You know, in other words, even that expression of I'm nobody could be michzi kiyuhara, could look like a little bit of gaiva. Too much humility could look like a little bit of gaiva sometimes. You know, like a Rosh Hashiva comes to the door. Imagine over here, you're coming into the Beis Medrash, and the Rosh Hashiva comes to the door, and you open the door for him, and he says, no, you go first. Is that anava or is that gaiva? What? It's absolute gaiva. I'm happy you came today. Because, of course, the right thing is that a Rosh Hashiva walks through the door first. That's the right thing. When he tells the guy, you go first, what is he saying? He's saying that he thinks the guy's on a higher madrega than him? It's an exaggerated humility. Exaggerated humility is gaiva. Ask him? Exaggerated humility is gaiva. I'm a nobody, you know. If I would come in and people call me Rebbe, Rav, Rabbi Sonnenschein, I would come in and say, guys, enough of this, Mr. Sonnenschein. That's what I want to be called. And then I would be famous as the guy who's called Mr. Sonnenschein. And you guys would call your friends and say, you know, my Rebbe, he's called Mr. We don't call him Rabbi, he's too big of an honor. When do I get more press? If I could just be Rabbi Sonnenschein, or if I go with Mr. Sonnenschein? When am I going to get more press? How am I more likely to wind up in the storybooks? I have a great idea. I will come in a polo shirt and sweatpants tomorrow and say, call me Yassi. My wife calls me Yassi. And then I'll be famous as the famous, humble person. There's a phrase in Yiddish, they make fun in Yiddish of the Bavusta Tzaddik Nister, the well-known hidden Tzaddik. You know, you got to be careful. Sometimes too much humility is gaiva. You know what's not gaiva? You know what's really humble? When you just do what people expect you to do. And you don't make waves. And you don't, you come in and you do what you're expected to do. When I walk into a shul and a Rav comes over to me because they know I'm a Rav, and they go, come sit in the front. So sometimes if I can get away with it, I'll say, no, I want to stay in the back. Because I like to take a vacation from sitting in the front. But sometimes it's too much gaiva to be humble. Come, sit in the front. No, I'm going to stay in the back. No, please, come sit in the front. No, I'm a nobody. Stop being such a nobody and go sit where you belong. You're being a big bal gaiva being such a nobody. You're drawing too much attention to yourself. Just go sit where you belong. That's the idea, you have in your shul a tzaddik comes and they want to put him in the front and he makes a big scene about sitting in the back. Well, what is that scene? He belongs in the front, right? So what is that scene? There's something called michzi kiyuhara, and sometimes even anava itself could be michzi kiyuhara. Sometimes humility itself could be michzi kiyuhara. Klaloi shel davar, the klal is, let's just finish this paragraph. Kol mashehu ikri b'mitzvah. Anything that's a real halacha, not easy. You're gonna be at work, and I was sitting in a meeting yesterday with someone who's not from, and she handed me a water, and I was coughing, and I opened the water. It's a little awkward. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaroi. Not so easy, Not so easy in front of someone who doesn't make brachas. You're in a business meeting, Baruch atah, it's not so easy. make a bracha. It's not so easy to say, here, you want to, she also offered me a cough drop because I was coughing. You want a cough drop? No, it's not kosher. Not so easy. She was older than me. It would have been easier. I felt the pressure, actually. I did feel the pressure. I felt the pressure to just take it. Because it's hard to say, I'm sorry, we're makbid on kosher. But when it's an ikri b'mitzvahs, when it's our obligation, when there's no doubt that that's our obligation, then we don't care what anyone thinks. Then we do what we have to do. We don't care what anyone thinks. Ya'aseu l'fnei kol malig. You do it no matter who's making fun. It doesn't matter who's making fun of you. You go ahead and you do what you need to do. U'mashe'enoi ikri, but what's not ikri, what you don't have to do, what's not an ikr adin, v'hu goyrem schaik v'hitul, and it causes people to make jokes and to laugh, lo ya'aseu, you shouldn't do it. I want to just point out one thing that you should keep in mind, and that is like this. He keeps talking about the person who's doing the act of chasidus. So if my minig is, when I daven Shemona Esrei b'yechidus, I jump and clap, maybe when I'm davening Shemona Esrei here, I should not do that. It causes people to make late sanas. So even if I have some reason in the world of chasidus why I do that, that's not something I should do here. You know, things like that. That's true. But I want to ask you about the people that do it because they really are chasidim. Or when you find someone, like I found that Rebbe, acting in a dramatic way, or you discover someone's super intense minig in serving Hashem, we have to be very, very careful. Just because you shouldn't do that, because it will cause other people to make fun, doesn't give us an excuse for us to be the ones making fun. We have to learn to have respect for the way everybody serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even if somebody made a mistake, and he did something in public, and the Mesilas Yesharim said he shouldn't, our job is to respect the way different people serve Hashem. And if people have interesting minhagim, and people do things different, it's not our job to make late sanas. Making late sanas of the way that a person serves their God is a very, very negative thing to do. And I can imagine HaKadosh Baruch Hu having an issue with that. My son loves me, and he's serving me, and you're making fun of him. It wouldn't make me feel so happy about that. So it's very important, even though we're learning about what not to do, so people shouldn't make fun, but it's still our job to look respectfully at everyone. We meet people that have different minhagim. We go to Williamsburg or Borough Park and we see actual Hasidim doing what they do, the way they shuckle back and forth, and the way they sing, or the way they talk. Or we go to different yeshivas, we meet different Talmidei Chachamim. Our job is to be broad-minded enough to be able to contain and to understand that there are many, many ways of serving Hashem. And there are many ways, you know, and if this guy's way of serving Hashem is that he goes to the mikveh every day, and this guy's way of serving Hashem is that he says Kriya Shema L'Amita in the dorm for 3 hours, and this guy's way of serving Hashem is that he wears a bekisha and a shtreimel, and this guy's way of serving Hashem is that he collects money by every davening for people that are trying to get married, whatever it is. Our job is to be very, very, very broad and to look with tremendous inclusion into everyone, as long as someone is earnestly serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's our job. So while we're going to work hard to stay below the radar and not to draw too much attention to ourselves and the unique things that we do to serve Hashem, we're also going to be super respectful and super understanding that there are many, many different ways to serve Hashem. Okay,